Part 1. The Insult. The wrench slipped from Jiho's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He cursed under his breath and wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of black grease across his skin. The mining drill's engine was giving him trouble again, and he had been working on it for 6 hours straight. His back ached, his fingers were sore, and all he wanted was a hot meal and his bed. Frontier Station Kappa 7 was not a glamorous place to live. It sat at the edge of human space, a collection of metal modules and mining equipment on a barren rock of a planet. The 300 people who called it home were there for one reason: to extract valuable minerals from the ground and send them back to Earth. Jiho had been on the station for 8 years now, ever since he left his family behind to find work. He was good with machines, always had been, and the station needed people who could keep the equipment running. He did not mind the isolation. In fact, he preferred it. Back on Earth, his mother had constantly nagged him about finding a wife and starting a family. His younger brother had married young and already had 2 children. Every video call home became an interrogation about why Jiho was still alone. Eventually, he stopped calling as often. Out here, nobody cared about his personal life. He fixed machines, collected his pay, and kept to himself. The station's speakers crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. All personnel report to the main hall immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, all personnel to the main hall. Jiho groaned. Station-wide announcements usually meant bad news. Maybe the mining operation was shutting down. Maybe the colonial administration was cutting their funding again. He grabbed a rag, wiped his hands as best he could, and headed toward the main hall. The large room was already packed with confused workers and their families. Station Commander Park stood on a raised platform at the front, looking uncomfortable in his formal uniform. Beside him stood several people Jiho did not recognize, wearing expensive suits with colonial administration badges. This was definitely not good. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Commander Park began. His voice echoed through the hall. 3 weeks ago, humanity made first contact with an alien civilization called the Velcron Empire. Their territory borders our outer colonies, and their military is significantly more advanced than ours. A murmur rippled through the crowd. First contact. Jiho had heard rumors, but nothing confirmed. He leaned against the back wall and listened. Negotiations have been tense, Park continued. The Velcron Emperor sees humanity as primitive and inferior. However, to avoid conflict, both sides have agreed to a cultural exchange program and peace treaty. As part of this agreement, the Emperor has offered his eldest daughter in marriage to a human citizen. The murmuring grew louder. Someone whistled. Someone else laughed. Jiho frowned. An alien princess marrying a human? That seemed too good to be true. One of the colonial administration officials stepped forward. She was a thin woman with cold eyes and a tight smile. "The Emperor has specifically requested that his daughter be matched with a human from one of our frontier stations. Someone who represents the working heart of our civilization. After careful consideration, we have selected an individual from this very station." Jiho's stomach twisted. He had a bad feeling about where this was going. "Jiho," the official said, looking directly at him. "Please come forward." The room fell silent. Every head turned to look at him. Jiho felt his face grow hot. "What?" he said. "Please come forward," the official repeated. His legs felt heavy as he pushed through the crowd. People patted his shoulder and whispered words he could not hear over the pounding of his heart. When he reached the platform, Commander Park gave him an apologetic look. "Jiho has been selected to marry Princess Nari of the Velcron Empire," the official announced. "The ceremony will take place in 3 days when the princess arrives. This union represents a new chapter in human-alien relations." The hall erupted in noise. People were shouting questions, some cheering, some laughing. Jiho stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. "This is insane," he finally managed to say. "I'm just a mechanic. Why me?" The official's smile did not reach her eyes. The Emperor was very specific in his requirements. He wanted someone humble, someone without political connections. You fit the profile perfectly. Later that night, after hours of paperwork and briefings, Jiho sat alone in his small quarters. His HAB unit was barely large enough for a bed, a desk, and a tiny bathroom. One wall was covered with shelves holding various engine parts and tools. It was not much, but it was his space. And now he was supposed to share it with an alien princess. Commander Park had pulled him aside and told him the truth. This was not an honor. It was an insult. The Emperor was mocking humanity by offering his undesirable daughter to the lowest human he could find. The princess was apparently considered ugly by Velcran standards, unmarriageable in their culture. And Jiho, a nobody mechanic on a forgotten station, was deemed the perfect match for her. The colonial administration did not care about Jiho's feelings. They cared about avoiding a war. If he refused, it would be seen as a rejection of the Emperor's offer, an insult that could spark conflict. The message was clear. Accept the marriage or be responsible for the deaths of millions. Jiho looked at his reflection in the small mirror above his sink. His face was still smudged with grease. His hair was messy. His work clothes were stained and worn. What could he possibly offer a princess, even one her own people rejected? 3 days later, the Velcran shuttle arrived. It was a beautiful ship, covered in intricate silver patterns that seemed to shimmer in the station's artificial light. The entire population of Kappa 7 gathered in the docking bay to watch. Jiho stood at the front, wearing the cleanest clothes he owned, feeling like a fraud. The shuttle's door opened and she stepped out. Jiho forgot to breathe. Princess Nari was not what he expected. She was shorter than him, with soft curves and gentle features. Her skin had a pale purple tint and her eyes were a deep amber color. She wore elaborate robes that did nothing to hide her full figure. By human standards, she was beautiful, stunning even, but the way she held herself told a different story. Her shoulders were hunched slightly as if trying to make herself smaller. Her eyes were downcast. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone expecting judgment at any moment. Their eyes met for just a second, and Jiho saw something in her expression that he recognized. Fear. Sadness. The look of someone who had been told their whole life that they were not good enough. His nervousness faded, replaced by something else. Anger, not at her but at the situation. At her father for treating her this way. At the colonial administration for using both of them as political pawns. He stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Frontier Station Kappa 7, he said, his voice steady. "I'm Jiho. I'll do my best to make you comfortable here." Princess Nari looked surprised. She said something in her own language, and a small device on her collar translated it into human speech. "You are unkind. I did not expect kindness." "You'll find plenty of it here," Jiho replied. He held out his hand, not sure if that was appropriate, but wanting to make some gesture of welcome. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand in his. Her fingers were warm and trembled slightly. As the crowd applauded and officials made speeches, Jiho made a silent promise to himself. Whatever happened, he would treat her with respect. She deserved at least that much. Part 5. The Emperor's Ultimatum. The conference room was crowded with people from 3 different factions. Colonial Navy officers stood on one side, rigid and formal in their uniforms. Velcran diplomats occupied the other side, elegant and cold. In the middle sat Jiho and Nari, 2 ordinary people caught in an extraordinary situation. Commander Park and several station representatives stood behind them. For 3 days they had been negotiating. The colonial administration wanted to avoid war. The Velcran delegation wanted to save face for Emperor Thovan. Everyone had opinions about what should happen to Nari, but nobody seemed to care what she actually wanted. "The Emperor has made his position clear," said Ambassador Talon, the lead Velcran diplomat. He was an older male with silver in his hair and a permanent expression of disdain. "Princess Nari must return to the homeworld. Her marriage to this human is legally questionable and politically unacceptable." "Legally questionable?" Nari stood up, her voice sharp. "I followed every requirement of both Velcran and human law. My marriage is legitimate." "You were coerced," Talon said smoothly. "Married under duress during a military crisis. Any contract signed under such circumstances can be challenged. I was not coerced. I married Jiho because I love him." "Princess, your emotional state is understandable but irrelevant. This is a matter of interstellar relations. The Emperor has given us a final ultimatum." Talon activated a holographic display. "Return to the Velcran homeworld within 24 hours, or he will consider this station an act of rebellion against the Empire. All trade agreements with humanity will be terminated. Military action against human colonies will be considered." The room erupted in angry voices. The colonial officers looked panicked. This was exactly what they had been trying to avoid. One wrong move could spark a war that humanity was not ready to fight. Admiral Kwan, the ranking colonial officer, held up her hand for silence. We need to be realistic. The Velcran Empire is militarily superior. We have 30 colonies in their region of space. Millions of human lives could be at risk. We cannot sacrifice so many for the sake of 2 individuals. So we just hand her over? Jiho said, his voice tight with anger. We surrender her to a man who abused her, who sees her as property? We are trying to find a diplomatic solution, Admiral Kwan said, but her eyes would not meet his. Jiho stood up, facing the Admiral directly. There is no diplomatic solution. Thovan wants his daughter back so he can punish her for embarrassing him. He does not care about law or honor or anything else. He is a tyrant having a tantrum, and you want to reward him for threatening violence. Watch your tone, Talon snapped. You speak of the Emperor of the Velcran Empire. I speak of a bully, Jiho shot back. And I will not let you take my wife. The meeting dissolved into shouting. Eventually, Admiral Kwan called for a recess. Everyone filed out except Jiho and Nari. They sat alone in the conference room holding hands, feeling the weight of impossible choices. Maybe I should go back, Nari said quietly. If it would prevent a war. If it would save lives. No, Jiho said firmly. We do not negotiate with tyrants. We do not reward threats with surrender. That is not who humans are. That is not who I am. Then what do we do? Before Jiho could answer, the door opened. Commander Ryun entered alone. He had been confined to the station since the battle. Technically a prisoner, but treated with respect. He approached their table and bowed slightly. I have been listening to the negotiations, he said. I have also been communicating with contacts back home. The situation on the Velcran homeworld is unstable. Your brother, Prince Hyan, has been building a coalition of nobles who oppose the Emperor's handling of this situation. Many believe Thovan is acting irrationally, letting personal feelings override political wisdom. Hyun is taking a risk, Nari said. Father could have him arrested for disloyalty. Your brother is more clever than that. He is not opposing the Emperor openly. He is simply asking questions, encouraging debate, suggesting alternative approaches. Others are doing the actual opposing. He is building a movement without becoming its target. Ryun sat down across from them, his expression serious. I am a soldier. I have served the Empire loyally for 30 years. But I have also witnessed what happened here. I saw humans willing to die for one of their own. I saw you, Princess, stand up to your father for the first time in your life. I saw honor in unexpected places. It has made me question things I thought I knew. What are you saying? Jiho asked. I am saying that maybe it is time for the Velcran Empire to change. Maybe it is time we learned something from humanity. About choosing love over pride. About respecting individual choice. About being more than just warriors and rulers. He pulled out a datapad. I have prepared a statement. If you give me permission, I will broadcast it across all Velcran communication channels. It will describe what I witnessed here. The courage, the honor, the love. It will challenge the Emperor's version of events. My father will call you a traitor, Nari said softly. Perhaps, but I am old. I have served long enough. And I find that I care more about doing what is right than about protecting my position. He looked at them both. Will you allow me to help you? Nari and Jiho exchanged glances. Then Nari nodded. Yes, thank you, Commander. Ryun left to send his broadcast. An hour later, the entire Velcran communication network lit up with his statement. He described the battle, the bravery of the humans, the legitimacy of Nari's marriage, and his own doubts about the Emperor's judgment. He called for the Velcran people to consider whether their culture's rigid standards were truly honorable or simply cruel. The response was immediate and explosive. Some called Ryun a traitor, but others began asking questions. Why was the Emperor so obsessed with his daughter's marriage? Why risk war over a personal matter? What did it say about Velcran culture that a princess could find more freedom and happiness among aliens than in her own palace? Nari decided it was time to add her own voice. She recorded a message speaking directly to the Velcran people. She described her life at court, the constant criticism of her body, the isolation, the pain. She spoke about meeting Jiho, about finding someone who saw her as valuable exactly as she was. She talked about working in the workshop, using her education for the first time, feeling productive and proud. I am still Velcran, she said in the recording. I am still my father's daughter. But I am also my own person. I am a wife, an engineer, a woman who deserves respect. I am asking my people to consider whether our culture serves us well, whether our standards of beauty and worth are just, whether pride is more important than love. The broadcast went viral across the Velcran Empire. Within hours, millions had seen it. Social media platforms filled with debate. Progressive Velcrans began openly supporting Nari. Conservative factions defended the emperor but sounded less certain. The cultural conversation that Nari's existence had always threatened to spark was finally happening. Prince Hyun seized the moment. He gave a carefully worded speech supporting his sister's right to choose her own path. Other nobles joined him. Even some military officials began questioning whether the emperor's ultimatum was wise. Emperor Thovan found himself in an impossible position. If he backed down, he would look weak. If he followed through with his threats, he would be attacking his own daughter publicly, which was starting to look cruel rather than righteous. His authority, absolute for decades, was suddenly being challenged from multiple directions. The breakthrough came on the 5th day. A delegation arrived from the Velcran homeworld, but it was not led by Ambassador Talon. It was led by Prince Hyun himself. The young prince entered the conference room with quiet confidence. He bowed to his sister, then to Jiho. I apologize for the suffering my family has caused you both. I am here to offer a different path forward. Does father know you are here? Nari asked. He does now. I left without his permission. That is its own statement. Jan smiled slightly. He can hardly punish me without looking even worse. I am here representing a coalition of nobles who believe the emperor has overstepped. We have proposed a compromise. He laid out the terms. Nari would remain married to Jiho and stay with him on the human station. In exchange, she would retain her royal title and status. The marriage would be officially recognized by both governments as legitimate. Trade and diplomatic relations would continue normally, and Emperor Thovan would issue a public statement accepting his daughter's choice. Father will never agree to that, Nari said. He already has, Hyun replied, reluctantly, angrily, but he has agreed. The alternative was facing a potential civil challenge to his authority. He values his throne more than his pride. Barely, but enough. Jiho looked at Nari. She looked back at him. After everything they had been through, could it really be this simple? There is one condition, Hyun added. Father wants Nari to visit the homeworld once per year. A formal visit to maintain family connections. He needs to show the public that the relationship is not completely severed. Can you do that? Jiho asked Nari quietly. Go back there even for a short time? Nari thought about it carefully. Then she nodded. Yes, if you come with me. I will never go alone. But if you are there, I can face anything. Then I will be there, Jiho promised. They accepted the terms. Formal documents were signed. Part 2. Learning each other. The first week was awkward. Nari moved through Jiho's small quarters like a ghost, touching nothing, saying little. She slept on the bed while Jiho made himself a place on the floor with extra blankets. He tried to give her privacy, spending long hours in his workshop even when there was no work to do. When they were together, silence filled the space between them. Jiho noticed things, though. He noticed how Nari would stand by the small window, staring out at the stars for hours. He noticed how she barely ate the food he prepared, taking only a few small bites before pushing the plate away. He noticed the sad look in her amber eyes when she thought he was not watching. On the 8th day, Jiho decided enough was enough. He knocked on his own door before entering, giving her warning. Nari was sitting at the small desk, reading something on a data pad. I'm going to the workshop, he said. Would you like to come? It might be less boring than staying here. She looked up, surprised. I would not want to disturb your work. You won't, Jiho said. Besides, maybe you can help. I could use an extra pair of hands. Nari hesitated, then nodded slowly. She followed him through the station's corridors, keeping a small distance behind him. Workers who passed them stared openly, whispering to each other. Nari's shoulders hunched forward again, that same defensive posture from the day she arrived. The workshop was Jiho's favorite place on the station. It was a large room filled with half-broken machines, parts, tools, and the smell of metal and oil. Several workbenches lined the walls, covered in projects in various stages of completion. To most people, it looked like organized chaos. To Jiho, it was home. "Sorry about the mess," he said, clearing off a stool for her to sit on. "I'm working on a drill engine that keeps overheating. The miners need it operational by next week." Nari sat down carefully, her robes pooling around her. She watched as Jiho opened the engine casing and began examining the internal components. Her expression shifted from passive observation to genuine interest. "The cooling system is inefficient," she said suddenly. Jiho looked up. "What?" "The way the coolant flows through these channels." Nari pointed at the exposed engine parts. "It creates pockets where heat builds up. That is why it overheats. The design is flawed." Jiho stared at her, then at the engine. He had been trying to fix this problem for 2 weeks. "How do you know that?" "I studied engineering and mathematics at the Imperial Academy," Nari said quietly. "Before my father decided I was only fit for political marriage. Velcron nobility must be educated in many subjects even if we are not allowed to use that knowledge." "Not allowed?" "Manual work is considered beneath our station," she explained. "And for me especially, my father said I should not waste time on such things. He said I should focus on making myself more presentable, more suitable." The bitterness in her voice was clear. Jiho set down his tools and looked at her directly. "Your father sounds like an ass." Nari blinked, shocked. Then for the first time since she arrived, she laughed. It was a small sound, quickly stifled, but it was genuine. "That is an accurate assessment," she said. "Well, he's not here," Jiho said. "And I could really use someone who actually knows engineering theory. Want to help me fix this?" They worked together for the rest of the day. Nari's theoretical knowledge combined with Jiho's practical experience made them an effective team. She suggested modifications, he implemented them. She calculated optimal flow rates, he adjusted the parts to match. By evening, the engine was running smoothly, cooler than it had ever been. "This is excellent work," Jiho said, wiping grease from his hands. "You're really good at this." Nari smiled, a real smile this time. "Thank you, I have missed this, using my mind for something productive." "You can come here anytime you want," Jiho offered. "I always have projects that need work." From that day forward, Nari spent most of her time in the workshop. She proved to be remarkably talented, solving problems that had stumped Jiho for months. The other mechanics were initially skeptical of the alien princess, but her skills quickly won them over. She redesigned their mining equipment, making it more efficient and less likely to break down. She created new maintenance schedules that saved them hours of work. As they spent more time together, the awkwardness between them faded. They began talking about more than just work. Jiho learned about Nari's life in the Velcron Empire. She was the eldest of 4 children, but her younger siblings were all considered beautiful by their culture's standards. They were tall, thin, with sharp angular features. Nari had always been different, taking after a distant ancestor. The court physicians had put her on strict diets from a young age, trying to change her body to match their ideals. They measured. "My food," she told him one evening as they worked on a broken air filtration unit. "Every meal, someone would weigh it and record it. If I gained any weight, my father would be informed. He would lecture me about bringing shame to the family." Jiho felt anger burning in his chest. "That's cruel." "That is normal, in my culture," Nari said. "Beauty is very important to us. It represents discipline, control, worthiness. I have always been considered undisciplined because I could not change my body to match their standards." "There's nothing wrong with your body," Jiho said firmly. Nari gave him a sad smile. "You are kind to say so." "I'm not being kind. I'm being honest." He set down his tools and faced her. "Nari, by human standards, you're beautiful. Really beautiful. The curves, the softness, all of it. That's what humans find attractive." She stared at him, her amber eyes wide. "You are serious." "Completely serious." Jiho felt his face grow warm, but he continued. "When you stepped off that shuttle, I couldn't breathe for a second. You're gorgeous. Your father sent you here as an insult, but he's an idiot. He gave up something precious because he was too stupid to see its value." Nari's eyes filled with tears. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Jiho panicked, thinking he had said something wrong, but then he heard her voice, muffled but clear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." They began sharing meals together after that. Jiho cooked simple food, nothing fancy, but he made sure there was plenty of it. Nari ate slowly at first, watching him carefully, but when she realized he truly did not care how much she ate, she began to relax. She told him about Velcran cuisine, about the dishes she had loved as a child before the court doctors took control of her diet. Jiho promised to figure out how to make them for her. Late one night, 3 weeks after her arrival, they were working on a particularly stubborn mining drill. It was past midnight and they were both exhausted, but they were close to solving the problem. Nari was lying on her back under the machine, adjusting a connection, while Jiho held a light for her. "Try it now," she called out. Jiho activated the drill. It hummed to life, running smoothly. "Perfect, you did it!" Nari slid out from under the machine, her face covered in grease and her robes dirty. She was grinning. "We did it. Together." She looked so happy, so alive, so different from the sad, quiet person who had arrived on the station. Jiho found himself smiling back at her, and suddenly the distance between them felt very small. "You have grease on your face," he said softly. "So do you," she replied. Neither of them moved. The workshop was quiet except for the hum of machinery. Nari's smile faded into something softer, more uncertain. Jiho's heart was pounding. "Nari," he said, "can I kiss you?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. The kiss was gentle, tentative, tasting of metal and hope. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "This is not what I expected," Nari said quietly. "When I was sent here, I thought I would be miserable forever. But you have given me something I never had before. A choice. Respect. Happiness." "You gave me something too," Jiho said. "I thought I wanted to be alone. But I was just waiting for the right person. Someone who understands. Someone who sees me. I see you, Jiho. And you see me." They stayed in the workshop until dawn, working side by side, occasionally stealing kisses between repairs. For the first time in both their lives, they felt like they belonged somewhere, with someone. Part 4. The Siege. The electromagnetic pulse had done its job. In the darkness of the docking bay, the Velcran soldiers' advanced weapons were useless, their armor's powered systems offline, their communication devices dead. They were suddenly vulnerable, confused, equal to the humans they had dismissed as primitive. The humans knew their own station. They had prepared for this. Emergency lights clicked on, casting everything in dim red. Jiho shouted commands and the defenders moved as one. Miners swung heavy tools. Mechanics used cutting torches. Security guards tackled Velcran soldiers who were still trying to understand what had happened. It was chaos. It was desperate. But it was working. Ryun rallied his troops quickly, to his credit. Even without technology, they were trained warriors. They fought back with physical skill and discipline. The docking bay became a brutal melee, humans and Velcrans grappling in the red shadows. Jiho grabbed Nari's hand. "We need to get to the reactor level. We have to restart essential systems before their ships realize what happened." They ran through the corridors, following emergency lighting. Behind them, the sounds of fighting echoed through the station. They passed other defenders heading toward the battle, workers carrying improvised weapons, determined looks on their faces. The reactor level was deep in the station's core. The electromagnetic pulse had been carefully calibrated to avoid damaging the reactor itself, but all the control systems were fried. Nari immediately began working on the backup controls, her fingers flying over manual switches and analog dials. "How long until their ships attack?" Jiho asked, helping her restore power to critical systems. "Minutes, maybe. Once Commander Ryun's team does not report back, they will assume something went wrong. They will either send more soldiers or simply destroy the station from orbit. Can we get the shields back up?" "Not in time. The shield generators were too close to the pulse epicenter. They will need hours to repair." Nari's hands moved faster, sweat beading on her forehead. But I can restore communications. If we can contact the colonial administration, tell them what is happening, maybe they will send help. They're 3 days away at best, Jiho said. We need to buy time. A voice crackled over Nari's communication device, which had been shielded and was still functional. It was Commander Ryun. Princess Nari, that was clever. The pulse disabled my men's equipment. But you have only delayed the inevitable. My ships will fire on the station in 10 minutes unless you surrender yourself to me immediately. Jiho grabbed the communicator. She's not going anywhere. Do your worst. I am not bluffing, human. I have my orders. I will destroy this entire station and everyone on it if necessary. Then you'll be killing your own soldiers. They're still on the station fighting ours. There was a pause. An acceptable loss in service to the Emperor. Nari took the communicator from Jiho. Ryun, please. You know this is wrong. My father is using you. He is asking you to murder innocent people, to kill your own soldiers, all because he cannot accept that I found happiness. Is that the honor you serve? I serve the Emperor. That is enough. The communication ended. Nari looked at Jiho, her eyes full of despair. He will do it. He will kill everyone. Not everyone. Jiho pulled up the station schematics on a working terminal. Look, the mining pods. They're separate from the main station, shielded with their own power systems. If we can get people into them before the attack, they might survive. There are not enough pods for 300 people. I know. Jiho's jaw tightened. But we can save some. We have to try. They sent out the alert. Families with children first, then the elderly, then anyone who could fit. The mining pods began launching, small craft fleeing into the darkness of space. It was not enough. It would never be enough, but it was something. Jiho stayed on the station, helping coordinate the evacuation. Nari stayed with him, refusing to leave. If this is the end, she said, then we face it together. The timer ticked down. 8 minutes, 7-6. Then something unexpected happened. The station's long-range communications came back online, restored by Nari's emergency protocols. And there was an incoming message from the Velcran Empire, but not from Emperor Thovan. The screen showed a young Velcron male, elegant and regal with kind eyes. Nari, he said. It is Hyun. I do not have much time. Father does not know I am contacting you. I saw your marriage announcement in the official records. I am so happy for you, sister, truly. Hyun, Nari gasped. Her younger brother, the one member of her family who had always been kind to her. You should not be contacting me. Father will punish you. Let him try. Nari, your message reached me. The one you sent after your wedding, explaining everything. I have been sharing it quietly with others in the court. Many nobles are disturbed by Father's actions. They believe he is overreacting, letting personal pride endanger diplomatic relations with humanity. There is growing pressure on him to recall the military action. It is too late, Nari said, her voice breaking. Commander Ryun will fire on the station in minutes. Everyone will die. No, Hyun said firmly. I have issued a counter-order in my capacity as second prince. It is a legal gray area. But Ryun will have to pause and verify before proceeding. That will buy you time. Colonial reinforcements are coming. They will arrive within hours, not days. You just need to hold on a little longer. Hope flickered in Nari's eyes. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Survive, Nari. Show Father that love is stronger than pride. Show our people that there is another way. The transmission ended. Immediately, another message came through. Commander Ryun, sounding frustrated and confused. I have received conflicting orders from the homeworld. I am required to verify before proceeding with station destruction. You have a temporary reprieve. Jiho let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. How long? Verification will take at least 2 hours, Nari said. But Ryun is not stupid. He knows what is happening. My brother is challenging my father's authority. This is political now, not military. 2 hours. We can work with that. Jiho activated the station-wide communications. All defenders, this is Jiho. We have a window. Hold your positions. Reinforcements are coming. We just need to survive a little longer. The fighting continued, but with new determination. The humans knew help was coming. They just had to endure. The Velcran soldiers, cut off from their ships and their technology, were at a disadvantage in the tight corridors of the station. Some began to surrender, realizing the situation had changed. Commander Ryun found himself in a difficult position. His soldiers were losing. His ships were under orders to stand down pending verification. and he could sense that the political situation back home was shifting. He was a military man, not a politician. He had always followed orders without question. But now those orders were contradicting each other, and he was being asked to commit actions that seemed increasingly dishonorable. He made his way to the reactor level, alone, his weapon lowered. Jiho and Nari met him there, flanked by a dozen defenders. "This has become complicated," Ryun said simply. "I am a soldier. I follow orders, but I am also Velkrin. Honor matters to me. Murdering civilians, killing my own soldiers, all for what? A personal dispute between the Emperor and his daughter? Then stand down," Nari said. "Wait for the colonial ships to arrive. Let the politicians sort this out. No more bloodshed is necessary." Ryun studied her for a long moment. "You have changed, Princess. You were always quiet at court, submissive. Now you stand like a warrior, like someone who knows their worth." "I learned it from my husband," Nari said, taking Jiho's hand. "He taught me that I deserve respect, that my voice matters, that love is not a weakness." "Perhaps your father is wrong about many things," Ryun said slowly. He lowered his weapon completely. "I will order my remaining soldiers to cease fighting. We will surrender to you until this matter is resolved through proper diplomatic channels." The relief that washed through the station was palpable. The fighting stopped. Wounded were treated. The evacuated civilians began returning from the mining pods, and everyone waited for the colonial ships to arrive. 4 hours later, 3 colonial Navy destroyers dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were not as large as the Velkran warships, but they were enough to change the balance of power. More importantly, they brought diplomats and legal experts. Jiho and Nari stood on the observation deck watching the ships maneuver into position. His arm was around her shoulders. Her head rested against his chest. They were exhausted, dirty, and battered. But they were alive. They were together. "We survived," Nari whispered. "We did more than survive," Jiho said. "We won." But even as he said it, he knew the real battle was just beginning. Emperor Thovan would not give up easily. The next fight would not be with weapons, but with words, laws, and political pressure, and Jiho had no idea if they could win that one. The convoy of ships traveled in silence through hyperspace. 17 Quilvan refugees and their human escorts heading toward a hidden colony in the Peridia system. Jinho sat in the cockpit of his own ship, watching the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel, when Bora entered carrying 2 cups of tea. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much on my mind." She settled into the co-pilot seat, something she'd been doing more often during their journey. "I keep thinking about what happens next. We saved everyone on the station, but there are Quilvans scattered across dozens of systems. My sister's still out there, probably in some corporate lab. We'll find her," Jinho promised. "Once we get everyone settled at the colony, we can start searching." Bora was quiet for a moment, then said, "I need to tell you something. The truth about what I am. You're a cook. I'm more than that." She set down her tea and took a breath. "I'm what my people call a keeper of tastes. It's genetic, passed down through specific family lines. We don't just understand food on a molecular level. We remember it. Every dish our ancestors ever tasted, going back hundreds of generations. It's stored in our genes somehow, accessible through meditation and practice." Jinho turned to look at her. "That's incredible. That's why the corporation wants us so badly. A keeper of tastes can recreate any dish from any culture, even cultures that no longer exist. We're living libraries of culinary history." Her voice dropped. "When I made you that Korean stew on our first morning together, I wasn't just researching and guessing. I was accessing genetic memories from a Quilvan who visited Earth 200 years ago. She met a family in a place called Busan and they fed her. The memory of that meal has been carried through my family line ever since." "The taste was perfect," Jinho said softly. "Exactly like my grandmother's cooking. Because I remembered your grandmother's 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 recipe. Or something close to it." Bora looked down at her hands. "There are only 37 keepers left in the entire galaxy. The corporations have been hunting us for decades. If they capture us all, an entire history of galactic cuisine dies. Thousands of cultures, millions of recipes, all lost forever. Is that why you tested me that first day? The thing about being too chubby to be loved?" Bora nodded. "I needed to know what kind of person you were. If you judged me by my appearance, you'd judge my people the same way. But you didn't. You saw past the surface to what mattered." She met his eyes. I'm trusting you with this because I think you understand what's really at stake. This isn't just about saving Quilvans. It's about preserving memory itself. Show me, Jinho said. Show me what you can do. They went to the ship's small kitchen. Bora pulled out basic ration packs and some preserved ingredients from storage. She worked quietly, her movements precise and purposeful, occasionally pausing with her eyes closed as if listening to something only she could hear. 40 minutes later, she placed a dish in front of Jinho. It looked simple, just rice and vegetables and a rich brown sauce. But when he tasted it, his throat went tight and his eyes burned with sudden tears. "This is from my grandmother's village," he said hoarsely. "This exact recipe. She used to make it for me when I was a kid." "How did you know?" "I didn't know which specific recipe would matter to you," Bora said gently. "But I accessed memories of Earth, of Korea, of home cooking made with love. I found this one in the memories and it felt right. The emotions attached to it were strong, even through centuries of genetic transfer." Jinho couldn't speak. He just ate, and each bite was a memory, a connection to a past he thought he'd lost forever. When he finished, he looked at Bora with new understanding. The corporations don't just want to study you. They want to own this, to patent genetic memory and sell it back to people as a product. Yes, and in the process, they'll destroy us. The extraction process the research proposal mentioned, it's not just deadly. It's designed to break down our genetic structure completely. They'll turn us into chemical components and sell us as flavor enhancers. Her voice was bitter. We'll become ingredients in our own food. That's not going to happen. How can you be sure? There are billions of them and only a few dozen of us. Because humans are really good at being stubborn about things that matter. Jinho reached across the table and took her hand. "And you matter, Bora. Not because of what you can do or what your genes are worth. Because of who you are. You're kind and talented and you care about people. That's worth protecting. Even if it means fighting corporations forever. Especially then." He squeezed her hand. "Besides, I've got a plan." "Oh no. It's a good plan," Jinho protested. "Your last plan involved turning a space station into a bomb. And it worked, didn't it?" He grinned. "But seriously, I've been thinking. The corporations are winning because they control information. They can hide what they're doing, target specific individuals, operate in the shadows. But what if we take that away from them? What if we make what you can do public knowledge?" Bora frowned. "I don't understand. Right now the corporations see Quilvans as resources to exploit. But what if the rest of the galaxy saw you as teachers? What if we set up places where keepers of tastes could share their knowledge freely? Restaurants, cooking schools, cultural centers. Make your abilities common knowledge instead of a secret worth stealing. That would make us more visible, more vulnerable. Or it would make you too valuable to harm. If thousands of people across dozens of systems are learning from you, if entire communities are depending on Quilvan teachers to preserve their own culinary heritage, then attacking you becomes politically impossible." Jinho leaned forward, warming to his idea. "Humans love food. We bond over it. We use it to preserve culture. We get emotional about recipes from our childhood. If we can show other species that Quilvans can do the same for them, give them back tastes they thought they'd lost, you won't need protection. You'll have allies everywhere." Bora stared at him. "That's actually brilliant. And completely insane. Those aren't mutually exclusive. It would take years to set up, resources we don't have, and we'd be exposing ourselves to danger every day." "Yeah," Jinho admitted. "But what's the alternative? Hiding forever? Letting the corporations hunt you down one by one? At least this way you're living instead of just surviving." Bora was quiet for a long time, her tea cooling in her hands. Finally she said, "I'd need help. Keepers of taste to teach, safe locations to work from, protection for our students and ourselves. You've got 43 human ships following us right now, full of people who are already committed to protecting Quilvans. I bet most of them would be willing to help set up schools and restaurants. And I bet once word spreads about what you can do, you'll have more volunteers than you know what to do with." "Why are you doing this?" Bora asked softly. "You could have fixed my ship and sent me on my way. Instead, you've made yourself a target for some of the most powerful corporations in the galaxy." "Why?" Jinho thought about his answer carefully. "When I was a kid, my grandmother taught me that food is love made visible. Every meal she made was a gift, a way of saying I matter, I'm valued, I'm home. You do the same thing. Every dish you make is an act of love and preservation. That's worth protecting. That's worth fighting for. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. I wish you could have met her. In a way I have, Bora smiled. Her recipes live in my genetic memory now. Through her descendants' memories, through the meals that mattered to his family, she's part of the great chain of food and love that connects all species who eat together. She would have loved that idea, Jinho said. His throat was tight again. And she would have loved you. Bora stood up and moved around the table. Before Jinho could react, she hugged him, her furry arms warm and strong around his shoulders. He hugged her back, and for a moment they just stood there in the small kitchen while the ship traveled through hyperspace toward an uncertain future. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for protecting me, for helping me remember that I'm not too chubby to be loved. You were never too chubby, Jinho said firmly. You're perfect exactly as you are, and anyone who can't see that is an idiot. She laughed, pulling back to look at him. I think I might be falling in love with you. Jinho's heart skipped. That's convenient, because I think I've been falling for you since that first breakfast. Really, I was so nervous that day. You made me cry with food. Pretty sure that's when I knew you were special. They stood close together, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Bora stretched up on her toes and kissed him gently. It was soft and sweet and tasted like tea and hope. When they pulled apart, Jinho was grinning like an idiot. So we're doing this? Fighting corporations, preserving cultures, falling in love. Apparently so, Bora said. Humans and their pack-bonding instincts. You're going to get me killed. Or we're going to change the galaxy. Or both. Yeah, Jinho agreed happily. Probably both.